Hello, everyone. My name is Stanley St. Rose, and today we're going to be talking about the War of 1812. Now, before I go into summary analysis of this war, please remember to give a like, subscribe, and/or comment so that the channel can continue to grow. So, the War of 1812 is a very interesting war. It's between, I guess, what you can say the countries that are involved in the War of 1812. You have the freshly birthed or freshly created America, that is a young country that is, currently at this time trying to going into Western expansion. You have Britain, that's like the global power that's in a war with France. And then you have the Native Americans who want to really put a stop to Western expansion for the Americans, for the United States. And so basically, why the war happens, the War of 1812, number one, you have British impressment. So the British are fighting the French. They're in a very tough war with the French. And what they start doing, they start taking American sailors and impressment. They're impressing them into the British Navy, into the British Army, and sending them out to go fight in their war. Which Americans don't want that. You're an American sailor. You don't have any involvement in the battle between the French and the British. The fact that they're impressing you and forcing you to go fight for them, that is something that you don't want. And so the Americans back home, they're very angry about this and they want war. Another thing is that the British was also the big bully at this time. In 1812, with American expansion, both at home and both in the global world, the global economy, the global market, the British, they've been very comfortable at the top, and America is starting to knock at the door. And so they're trying to set policies and restrictions through force and through the law to really stop American sailors and Americans from interfering with their ordeals. They also want to limit the trade between the Americans and also the French. And so all of this really angered Americans, and they wanted war. So the British was the big bully at this time. They had a big army, they were powerful, they had money, and so they felt that they could bully America around. Before the war started, there was a peace, there was a treaty, there was an idea of how we can work together, how these countries could work together and function together. But really, all the things that the British were doing were really pushing America into war, into the War of 1812. And so, those are the reasons basically. It's the impressment, the restrictions, the policies, the unfairness, the bullying, in all terms, economy, navy, the dealing with the French. And the other thing is that the British, they just weren't on the American side. I mean, America at this time, a young country, was dealing with a lot. You have the Native Americans at home that really don't want you to exist, that don't want you to expand. So you have an enemy at home and you have an enemy abroad. And so basically, when the war began, is when America had enough. The American citizens had enough, and they wanted the war. They wanted the war for multiple reasons, for all the reasons that I just talked about, and also they wanted land in Canada. A lot of Americans wanted more land in Canada, and so a lot of Americans were in favor of the War of 1812 because they saw opportunity, they saw success, they saw Western expansion, they saw money. And so the war began, from 1812. Technically it ends in 1814, but historical documents, you can say 1812 to 1815. And basically the war goes on, and nothing changes. America lost a lot of early battles, but later you have Andrew Jackson that wins a lot of very important battles. The war gets declared, and it's a grueling war. America wins some battles and loses some battles, but at the end of the war, it ends with the Treaty of Ghent. And basically, it pretty much establishes things exactly how they were before the war started. So nothing really changes. The only thing that really truly changes at the end of the War of 1812 is that America pretty much enters this space of we're here to stay, because the British was really knocking down their freedoms. I mean, America's sovereignty and liberty was being questioned. I mean, if British could bully America around internationally, maybe it could bully America around internally. During the war, I mean, the British did a lot of horrible things to America. They burned down Washington, D.C., like the White House. They burned down a lot of important government buildings and important government buildings in Washington, D.C. And so they really, really, walloped America during that time. But ultimately, it pretty much ended in a draw because, no one got what they wanted. Except, we can say Americans, in terms of standing up to Britain at that time, it taught Britain that we couldn't be pushed around anymore. It taught Britain that America was here to stay. And the other thing that was very beneficial, although, America, we didn't earn, vast amounts of land in Canada, we can say that we really, really demolished Native American hopes of ever regaining their land, or pretty much America was like, all right, because of what the Native Americans did, because they did join up with the British. A lot of tribes joined with the British to fight against Americans during this war. We can say that this war, because the British lost, it really encouraged Americans to finish conquering all of America or the United States. And it really marked the end for Native Americans because after this war, Americans were like, okay, now it's all about Western expansion, and now we have the United States. And so I guess the true loser, or the people who lost with this war, was the Native Americans because, well, all of the land were taken over except for the reserves today, which, that's war. But yeah, the Treaty of Ghent ends the war. America, established itself as a sovereign, independent nation with its liberties and its freedoms. And Britain, it pretty much learns that it can't just do whatever it wants anymore by the end of this war. So that's my summary in terms of analysis with this work. It says a lot about the hunger that America had in its early days for success and for expansion. Like those Americans, they wanted Western expansion. They wanted Canada. They wanted to conquer all of it. Canada, the Western states, from east to west, from sea to shining sea. Wow. From sea to shining sea. There you go. From sea to shining sea, Canada, parts of Canada. The Americans at that time, they wanted expansion, they wanted freedom, they wanted liberty, they wanted economic success, and they wanted to rival the British. And so, truthfully, this war helped America create an identity for itself, and also nationalism really developed around this time because the Americans were like, we want to establish ourselves in the world, not just in America, not just in our own country, but throughout the world. And this war really marked the beginning of American global dominance. So that's my summary. That's my analysis of the War of 1812. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and or comment. And I'll see you guys in the next video.